100 passengers on board the train. Nobody reportedly injured. One passenger, though, treated for shock. I'm just seeing here as well that, according to a spokesperson for the infrastructure manager, that is the company that runs the railways, the driver did try to apply the emergency brakes, but it was too late. Let me just give you a bit more information kind of regarding the situation of the railways in Belgium. It's a pretty densely populated area, and there are railway lines that crisscross this region. There is an awful lot of commuter train traffic. There is an awful lot of traffic that will be interacting with road traffic as well. And there is a history of incidents at level crossings. Last year, 5 people died in incidents in 2025. That's according to the infrastructure operator Infrabel. That was the lowest number recorded since 2020. But it is the challenge of a dense railway network that crisscrosses many towns and interacts, of course, then with the road network as well. A spokesperson for Belgian police hasn't immediately commented on this situation, but we have heard from the Justice Minister, Annelies, who can give us more details on this. This is Annelies Verlinden, who posted on X saying words failed her and that her heartfelt sympathy had gone to the victims, the children and their families and everyone affected by the tragedy. She wished everyone as much warm closeness, thanking the emergency services and the police for their swift intervention and the sustained efforts on site. The prosecutor's office, of course, also following up on this accident. Thomas Bacon, a spokesperson for the train service operator, said that he would be passing on camera footage from the level crossing site to prosecutors. He joins us again live on Sky News. Thomas, I appreciate you joining us. Yeah, just tell us more about what you understand has happened this morning.
So the facts are that this morning, 8:08, there was a minivan trying to cross a level crossing, but the level crossing was closed. So that means the red lights were flashing and the barriers were down. Why did the minivan still cross? We don't know. There's an investigation. The magistrate is busy doing the investigation, and we have images from our technical camera here at the level crossing behind me, and we are giving those images to the magistrate to help the inquiry, because of course, as the infrastructure manager, we are trying to understand as well how this accident, this dreadful accident, could happen.
We understand there have been multiple fatalities. What are you hearing as the service operator?
Well, as far as fatalities, I can't disclose any information yet because at the municipality, the mayor will be holding a press conference later on, and the information will go via the municipality because they are still trying to contact family members. So I can't give any more details right now.
Understood. With regards to the train itself, how many people do you believe are on board, and what is the status of both the driver and the passengers?
So my colleagues from SNCB told me there were about 100 passengers on board of this train, a train that came from Bruges and was on its way to Mechelen, Malin. There were no casualties on board of the train. There was one passenger who was taken to hospital because that person was in shock.
You mentioned that SMCB, you work for Infrabel. Just talk to me about the responsibilities that your company has and the responsibilities that SMCB have. How does the railway operate in Belgium?
Yeah, sure. The SNCB is the train operator, so they own the train which was impacted here. As for Infrabel, we're the railway infrastructure managers, so the train rides on our tracks, the level crossing is our responsibility.
Talk to me, if you will, about how you operate these railways, because a little bit of reporting from Reuters notes that you have a lot of these lines that kind of crisscross between roads and towns, etc. Do you have a lot of level crossings? Are incidents like this rare, or have you seen them before?
Well, an accident of this proportion is rare, fortunately, because this is most probably one of the most severe accidents at a level crossing we are experiencing right now here in Belgium. As for the number of level crossings, we're at almost 1,600 level crossings. And that's because Belgium was the first country on Europe mainland to have train tracks. And of course, afterwards, houses started being built around the railroad tracks. So, historically, Belgium has a lot of level crossings. We are monitoring, of course, accidents on level crossings. And we can say that the statistics point out that the number of accidents at level crossings are diminishing, so slightly. But we still have quite some accidents at level crossings, not always with fatalities, but here today, this is one of the worst accidents in the history of Belgium, unfortunately. So our thoughts go out to the victims and the family of the victims.
It appears, Thomas, from some of the footage that we've seen, that there has been damage to the railway infrastructure itself. And it looks as though the overhead cables have been damaged. What has happened to the railway line? Has the train remained on the tracks as well, or has it been derailed at all?
No, the train is damaged, but it's not being derailed. As for the infrastructure, we have a catenary post which is damaged. We have some cables that are damaged. The installation of the level crossing is damaged. But to be quite frank and to be quite honest, these at the moment are the least of our problems. Foremost, we are working with the victims. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims and the family of the victims. As for the material costs and the damage, that is not so much important.
Very much understood, and we appreciate you, Thomas, making time for us here on Sky. With regards to Infrabel's response to this, do you have teams on the ground? Do you have kind of teams that are working both with the police and SNCB?
Yes, of course, everybody involved, everybody who needs to be here to help with this incident is here in Buggenhout, and everybody is really concerned. This is a very black day for our country. This is one of the worst accidents we've had at a level crossing here in Belgium. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims.
And what is your anticipation for the next couple of hours? The investigation ongoing. There's no discussions yet about moving either the van or the train. I assume that whilst magistrates and prosecutors and police investigate, this scene is going to have to stay as it is for some hours to come.
Exactly. The scene will stay as it is so that everybody involved with the investigation can do the investigation. They can have all the details. They will very closely monitor the scene here. And when all the evidence has been collected, then the scene will be released, so to speak. And then we can start by evacuating the train. Then we can start by inspecting the damage on the railroad and other infrastructure. But as I said earlier, this is the least of our concerns right now. We are witnessing a very severe accident, one of the worst in the history of Belgium at the level crossing. So the victims and the family of the victims, that's our first priority.
We can see, Thomas, at least one emergency service vehicle behind you. With regards to the response to the victims, it just looks as though that screen has paused. Understandably, as a spokesperson for Infrabel, the railway infrastructure operator, Thomas, in high demand from various sources to try and understand what has gone on. But let's just take a few moments just to consider what has happened. This is the breaking news that several people have lost their lives at an incident between a train and a school bus in Belgium. This is at a level crossing around 30 kilometres north and west of Brussels. According to Belgium's transport minister, 4 people have been killed in this incident. In comments reported by RTL, the transport minister, Jean-Luc Ruck, being described as saying that 2 teenagers, the bus driver and also another adult described as a chaperone, were killed. Just hearing there from Thomas Beck and the spokesperson for Infrabel saying that around 100 passengers were on board the railway service from Bruges, as well as a driver as well. There was no reports of any injuries of those on board the railway service, but that there was one person treated for shock. This was an incident that began to first be reported at 8:08 local time. It was at a level crossing. The lights were in action. The barriers had descended. And Thomas, the spokesperson for the railway line infrastructure operator, saying that the van had come from a road parallel to the railway line and turned into that level crossing area. It was unclear as to what led to this incident, but we do know the outcome of the tragedy, that 4 people have been killed in this crash. The van being described as operating for a school for those with special educational needs. And the Transport Minister says that his first thoughts are with those victims and also with those who have been left injured and with their families. We're going to bring you more details on this on Sky News. There's more details on the live page on the Sky News website and app. It is 11 o'clock. This is Sky News. If you're just joining us, bringing you breaking news from Belgium. A train has collided with a school bus. Several people have reportedly died, including 2 teenagers, the bus driver and another adult who was chaperoning those children. They're said to be of secondary school age. Police have told Belgian media the bus was carrying pupils from a special needs school. These pictures from the scene show a large response from emergency services, fire engines, ambulances and a helicopter, all in attendance. Let's take a look at where the incident took place. It was in Buggenhout, East Flanders, just north of Brussels. Here is the scene more closely. You can see where the collision happened. The bus was transporting students to school and was hit by a train at a level crossing. That level crossing reportedly a kilometre away from the station in the town where that train was coming to a stop. Well, Belgium's Transport Minister has reacted to the news, saying words fail her. Posting on social media, Annelies Verlinden said the following: "My heartfelt sympathy goes out to all the victims, the children, their families and everyone affected by this tragedy today. I wish everyone much warm closeness. Thank you to the emergency services and the police for their swift intervention," she goes on to say, adding that the sustained efforts on sites were appreciated. The Transport Minister saying that the Prosecutor's Office and the Justice Minister saying the Prosecutor's Office is also following up on this accident. Well, we can hear more from our Europe correspondent, Alistair Bunkle.
This incident seemed to happen just before 8:15 this morning, so school run time. Belgian school children, like school children in the United Kingdom, returning back to school today after the extended weekend, the bank holiday. The incident seemed to happen at a level crossing, and the reports are that the barriers were down and the lights were red, obviously indicating that traffic should stop, and that a train was approaching. It was about a kilometre outside of the local train station, so the train was already starting to brake as it was approaching that train station, and then did apply an emergency brake, but still hit this vehicle, this minibus. Unclear why the minibus was on the tracks at the time. A number of school children on board. It was a minibus as opposed to a larger coach, but they're secondary school-aged children. I think it was 7 on board, including, of course, then the bus driver himself. And just reports at the moment citing local sources, and this comes from our local media partner, news partner here in Belgium, that there have been several fatalities, although that has not yet been confirmed officially or publicly by either the police or local officials in the area, which is just north of where I am in Brussels. The mayor is expected, we understand, to perhaps give a press briefing a bit later on today, and some of those who are on the train have been taken to care at a local or nearby fire facility, fire station as well. Some of those, of course, suffering from shock. So no confirmation on injuries and fatalities beyond sources reporting that there have been a number of fatalities. I think the fact that a few high-profile Belgian politicians are starting to tweet about it and post on X about it suggests that it could be accurate that there have been fatalities, but we wait to hear official confirmation of that.
Let's bring you the transport writer and broadcaster Christian Volmar. Good to see you. Appreciate you joining us here on Sky News. What's your understanding as to what's happened today? And just describe, if you will, the railway lines and infrastructure in Belgium. It's been reported by Infrabel, the infrastructure operator, 1,600 level crossings across the country. It paints a picture of a very busy, interconnected railway system.
Absolutely. In Great Britain, we've had a long programme of reducing the number of level crossings, and this is precisely why. Belgium, the trains are kind of like suburban trains mostly. Belgium is a small country, so there tend to be frequent, relatively slow, quite efficient train services. So rush hour times like this, the trains are bound to be quite well used. I think it's important to note that it looks like all the injuries and fatalities are on the bus and not on the train. This is effectively a road accident rather than a train accident.
You mentioned there about the fact that these are relatively kind of commuter trains that kind of make their way through towns and villages. With a railway line operating as it does and with the train approaching a station around 1 kilometre or so away, we would expect a relatively slow operating service at this point, would we?
No, not necessarily. I mean, level crossings are, long established and a very safe, generally, form of crossing the railway. The key question is, what did the bus do? And was it a fully gated? I haven't managed to find this out. Was it a fully gated level crossing? Or was it one of these half-gate ones, which people sometimes, and I'm not saying that's happened in this case, but sometimes try and kind of zigzag round, even though the lights are flashing. And obviously the investigators will look at this. But I think this reinforces the idea that now that railways very rarely have accidents that are caused by things on the railway, that level crossings are seen, and this is certainly the case in the UK, seen as the greatest risk for railway accidents. And, that's why, in the UK, Network Rail is trying to eliminate as many as possible.
Talk to me, if you will, about how train technology and safety and operations have improved. Because, I'm old enough to remember the litany of tragedies that occurred on British railway networks 20, 30 years ago. And you do not hear of the incidents that we would have once done. That will be in part because of multiple improvements. How developed are railway lines now in 2026?
Absolutely. I mean, the key is the signalling systems, which are far more sophisticated than they used to be. I mean, trains used to rely on, red and green signals that were controlled very locally by signal staff who might sometimes make an error. Now, trains are operated from large control centres. Most of it is automated. There is little scope for human error. And there are multiple kind of internal checking systems to stop, for example, a red light showing when, a green light showing when it should be a red. And that was the cause, for example, of the Clapham rail disasters nearly 40 years ago, where a faulty signal was shown green and should in fact have been red. So all those things have led to massive improvements, and training has improved. Drivers are kind of subject to much more intensive training than they used to be. Every driver has to have route knowledge so that they don't go on tracks where they're not aware of where the signals are, and so on. So, railways have become noticeably safer since I started writing about them about 30 years ago.
I'm just seeing here, as we're speaking, I'm just looking at the website of Infrabel, which is the network operator in Belgium, and looking at their pages regarding safety. And it's notable that their first point regarding safety is safety at railroad crossings. It is the main cause of accidents at the railway lines, and they say on here that they call on all road users to stop whenever there is a railroad crossing with lights flashing, a bell ringing or barriers closed. It appears from the scene that we've been seeing that there are the barriers, there are the flashing lights, there are those warning signs and symbols, and a spokesperson for Infrabel said that all of that was in operation. It sometimes, though, is it not the case that people do get maybe confused or kind of challenged by these kind of sites and situations, you know, level crossings and not necessarily places that everyone drives across? What can be done to make them safer than what is already in place?
I think I'd not like to speculate about what happened in this particular incident.
No.
But in order to make them safer, first of all, you need full barriers across, which some of these are half barriers, and the full barriers are safer, but they have the risk that they can trap a car halfway through, and that's one of the issues. So they have to have very strong monitoring from a control center, but also the key point, as I keep on stressing, is to have as few of these as possible. I'm rather shocked that there are 1,600 level crossings in a country as small as Belgium, and I somewhat suspect this will put the pressure on Infrabel, which is the equivalent of Network Rail, is the infrastructure operator, will actually start to look at some of these level crossings and try and eliminate as many as possible. But that's an expensive thing to do. You know, every time you have to build a bridge or an underpass, and it is a very expensive thing to do.
We're just seeing here live pictures of the scene from Buggenhout. This is the situation live at 12:10, and you can see there the site of that collision. You can see there some of the warning signs and symbols to the train driver as well from their perspective. And talk to me, if you will, about kind of the level of training, the level of experience that is required from train operators, because, you know, they are responsible, you know, for a huge amount of roles and also safety in operating these trains. You know, we've been hearing there was 100 passengers on board. We're also hearing, of course, about the interactions there is with the road network. There is an awful lot of responsibility on the shoulders of one individual to ensure that services do proceed in the manner that they should.
Absolutely, and that's why in the UK, you know, drivers get training for nearly a year, both acquiring general knowledge and particular route knowledge to ensure that they have the relevant experience to drive safely. But, you know, I do have to emphasize this. This is more a responsibility of the road authorities than the railway authorities. You know, this is a matter of dealing with crossings of the railway, which is the responsibility of road authorities, and they have to look at how to mitigate the risk. And, you know, fortunately, this is a rare event. You know, the very fact that, you know, we're on the news here talking about this shows how rare it is, whereas, you know, in contrast, you know, we lose 6 or 7 people every day on Britain's roads, and we never hear about them. So the very fact that this happens so rarely is a tribute to really the improving safety of the railways. In Belgium, the railways were first started in 1835, just a few years after us, and you know, they've clearly have a pretty safe record in the same way that railways across Europe do.
Yes, and that was the comment made by the spokesperson for Infrabel was, you know, the railways were so old and established in Belgium, and then towns and municipalities have built up around them, and that's led to this figure of 1,600 level crossings. You mentioned there that, from your perspective, this is a kind of a road safety traffic issue that has then interacted with the railway service resultant of that. What is the interaction between road and rail operators? Because you have multiple firms, businesses, operators coming together at these key points. How well do they work and interact with each other?
Generally, this works well. I obviously less cognizant of the situation in Belgium, but here they work relatively well together. although bridge bashing is actually, a real issue in this country. Belgium is a much flatter country, so I don't think they have as many kind of underpasses under the railway and so on. But here we have a lot, and bridge bashing is a major problem because you can actually damage the bridge. You can also obviously get the driver being injured, and that's one where there's a lot of conflict between local authorities and the railway because again, it's very expensive to mitigate that. You either have to put up lots of sophisticated warning systems or, dig a deeper tunnel underneath the railway or whatever. And that has proved a big issue. So, but generally, local authorities and the railways cooperate to reduce the risk. And as I emphasised, this is a fortunately rare event.
With regards to the train itself, when there is an obstruction on the tracks, and that can be anything from a landslip or a tree falling through to, a vehicle such as this, do modern trains have sensors in the way that some modern cars have now, or is it entirely reliant on the driver seeing that obstruction and responding to it?
Generally, it's the responsibility of the driver, but you raise an interesting issue there because one of the ways that railways have improved is the crash worthiness of rolling stock, and much has been done to mitigate the risk to drivers to ensure that the cab is safer, that it is reinforced. And that in the event of an accident, the driver is more likely to survive and the train is likely to not be badly damaged, as you can see in this case. And that's, again, another aspect in which the railways have worked very hard to improve the safety of the system.
We also heard from the train infrastructure operator that the train, whilst sustaining damage, remained on the tracks and there had been no derailment of any of the carriages. What do you make of that?
Well, again, that's something where railways have improved, that they are more likely to stay on the tracks in these sort of accidents. Derailment is always the biggest risk to people if the train stays on the tracks. Now, there was a recent incident in Cumbria where the train derailed slightly on the West Coast Main Line and stayed upright. And because it stayed upright, there were absolutely no injuries or certainly fatalities. And so, again, this is part of building in safety into the rail system. And again, has been hugely successful in that trains now are more likely to stay upright than in the past, where they were, lighter and somewhat, unfortunate word, but flimsier, as it were.
Christian Vollmar, really appreciate you joining us here on Sky News. Thank you so much for your time.